Hello, David. Hello. Welcome to our event, to Smartcom Technological Conference. I see that you have a very interesting topic today for presentation. You are coming from Vectra, which is one of the prominent vendor in terms of anomaly detections and cybersecurity connected with artificial intelligence. So I suggest that you just start with your presentation.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to our video here. Today I bring you a new topic. It's a kind of cross-platform cyber defense in real time. And let me show you how Vectra addresses this and how we can help you. So from our perspective, when we have a look on the threatscape, we have two main factors today. It's the state-sponsored attacks and the targeted attacks, and on the other side is ransomware. And both are kind of very, very tricky to handle. The ones encrypts your data, wants the ransom from you, and the others are really targeting you to get your information, get your corroborated information, and try to steal something or break you down. And when we have a look to the past, we see that the environment developed a lot. The environment changed. So how did it change? So just as a short recap, so nowadays it started from the enterprise network and then moved on to some other data centers, probably some outsourced data centers. It moved on to public cloud services like software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service. But then on top, IoT devices are still there in the network, and probably as well, COVID pushed the remote workforce more to remote. So your services are more decentralized. And what we're seeing, we have a kind of not a perimeter anymore where you can build a high wall around. So we see a kind of broad environment that you need to care about all. But how can you make sure that your remote workforce or your cloud that's not hosted in your environment is secure? And how can you make sure that you understand attacks that are happening between those and leveraging several kind of attack vectors? When we have a look, what we have today, we have great solutions in place, right? IDS, IPS solutions. We have NetFlow to understand who is communicating with whom. Next generation firewalls helping us to understand what is hidden in the kind of streams. And of course, SIMs that are getting all the logs, that are getting all the information together into one point and building use cases on top and throwing us alerts. And as a base layer, of course, we have the PCAPs where we can analyze very, very deep. But we have a problem with the relevance because we cannot have a PCAP over everything in your environment. But even though we have those solutions in place, we have still a lot of blind spots. And the attackers can still be hidden. And the other challenge, at least what I've seen out there in the wild, if you have the SIMs in place, you have a lot of alerts. And the challenge is a little bit where to find the hidden needle in the haystack, right? So what we thought, we need something up there that gives you the visibility and the relevance together. And the first question what you might have is, yes, it's a good point, but how can you achieve that? How can you achieve that? So the first base of this is we need the right information, we need the right data. So without the right data, you cannot provide visibility and relevance and give you a correlated, enriched view. The next point is you cannot analyze it all yourself anymore. It's too much information. It's too much data that's getting thrown at you. You need some systems that help you to analyze it the right way, enrich the information, to give you the output, to give you a continuous compromise awareness. And how does Vectra do that? So what Vectra does, we have pre-built detection use cases that are spun around the kill chain. So from command and control to reconnaissance, or lateral movement to exfiltration in even botnets, we provide you predefined use cases that work out of the box. So there's no use case engineering required, because we had a slide before, we need the right information where we get the information from. And what we say is, you can manipulate logs. You can manipulate endpoint clients. But what you cannot manipulate is the traffic that's being seen in your environment. So what we do is we grab the network traffic for the physical network installations and run those use cases on top. But now you might say, hey, wait, you told something before about cloud. What about my infrastructure as a service? What about my platforms? How can I cover those? Correct. So what we did is we developed as well. I'm not sure if this is in the way. Let's move it like this. So what we developed is we developed for the cloud as well, the similar kind of use cases, so we can provide you the same linear coverage as we can do on premise. So the kind of tech progression steps are a little bit different. They're a little bit more precise. So we have from pre-access to lateral movement and impact, exfiltration, several kind of detections that we provide you out of box as well. And the great thing is for those cloud applications, it's for the installation, it's kind of a click. Because what we do is we adapt to the logs. Because you might know, hey, Office 365 doesn't provide me any network traffic anymore. I just see a client connecting to some Microsoft IP addresses, and that's it. And so what we do is we connect to the logs in the backend and run our use cases based on logs. So we shifted the algorithms from IP addresses, hosts, to accounts, privileges, and permissions. And if we see now the whole view of this, it gives you a complete coverage from your from your perimeter, from your enterprise network to your data center, where we can be installed on virtual systems, because systems between servers that are virtualized will never leave the virtual environment. It will stay within those hosts and to the cloud. So everything is in. We are developing at the moment, or we are at the moment to beta stage for AWS. That's the next part that will come, in addition to the Microsoft part of Azure AD and Office 365. And let me show how that looks in real. So this is a result of a POC I did with a customer. So we had there nearly 200,000 hosts. This host generated something like 30K events. And that would be the number you would see in a SIEM solution. What we do with Vectra is we group those events to detections. And so you see already a big efficiency boost to the detections themselves. And those detections are then reflected to hosts. Both of them get a scoring, and that's how we can score a host, score an account, and reflect them into those quadrants. So from low, medium, high, and critical, we sort those clients, we sort those accounts in, and that's where the deprioritization starts. And if you look on the raw numbers, in this case, we have an efficiency boost of 44 times. And if you just see in the overall picture from 200,000 hosts, just having 63 hosts in a critical quadrant, that's kind of a good metric, in my opinion. And that's something your team could care of. And let me show you now how that looks in real. So when we log into Vectra, we see the same quadrant as we've seen before. So this is my demo environment, a little bit less IP addresses, but the same. We have low, medium, high, and critical. Because somehow, if you see alerts, if you see some situations, you need to know how critical it is and how fast the attention is needed from your side. When we have a look at the quadrant itself, you see there's a threat score and a certainty score. So those are the two metrics where we identify hosts and detections. And I brought an example with me today. prepared it here. Just set a filter on Orion. And let me show you how this efficiency boost is gained and how we can help you there to understand and to identify the threats of your environment. So in this example, we have an Orion system. It's a server. It seems like a server. We see, yes, some groups has been assigned, and this host has a threat score of 79 and a certainty of 87. Let's have a look what has been done. Let me just shrink it a little bit so we have everything on the screen. So what we can see on the first view, we've seen that, yeah, the threat kind of raised really, really fast. That's probably something suspicious. And as well, what we can see on the attack phases, we've seen command and control, reconnaissance, and lateral movement. So let us investigate now what happened there. So it seems that there was a tunnel at first. Then there have been some suspicious LDAP queries. Let us have a look what's happening there. So for the LDAP queries, you can see here that we requested the admin accounts and all the objects that are in relation to the admins, and received some objects. Based on the fact that the response is encrypted, we only see the objects. But we can already see here, hey, probably a suspicious query has been submitted. Moving on, the next step, what we've seen there then is, we've seen some RPC reconnaissance. So those systems that have been pulled before are now getting checked via RPC. And then something fantastic happens, right? One of those hosts that was part of this pool of data before is doing now some suspicious remote execution. And when we have a look on this, what happens here? So we see that we see a suspicious remote execution from the server sub Orion. That's the system we're investigating at the moment. And this system was logging in with the SVC Orion account to a Gwen system. If you're probably not knowing what a suspicious remote execution is, Vectra is providing you a kind of handbook for all the things that we detect. So we map all the MITRE attacks from the attack framework. We give you some triggers. What could cause this detection to trigger? What could be the root causes to see this at all? What is the business impact, and what are the steps to verify what we recommend to do? Let's have a look what's happened more, right? So let's go on back to the Orion system, and then something interesting happens. We see a privilege anomaly. And that is something when it gets really hard to replicate in a SIM solution, because all our detections are not based on signatures. We are doing those detections based on algorithms, based on neural networks. And in this case, we learn with a new environment what is normal. So we see here that this server sub Orion has never been seen with the Gwen ADM account, and never has been seen with the terminal server that seems to connect to the ADFS. But what we can say is the HQS service account does that. So if you would now say, hey, yes, okay, that were all the detections on the system. Yeah, it's done. Okay, we've seen something. Probably it's not good. Probably let's block it. Probably let's clean up the system. That might be a start, but then now the great thing of Vectra comes in. Now we can have a look on the account as well. So what happened with the step before? Within the suspicious remote execution, the Gwen ADM account was stolen. Because we can now see, I'm sorry, because we can see now that the system, let me just disable that to flight mode. Okay, what we can see now is that this account, SVC Orion, was used to log into this one, to the Gwen ADM system. And now we see the Gwen ADM account doing some suspicious activity. And that's now where it gets really, really interesting. So you can see the threat score and the certainty is very high as well. What we can see now here from the attack phase is even more. So there was some exfiltration. There was some lateral movement within your cloud environment, reconnaissance and command and control. And let me show you how that works. So we have this connecting privilege anomaly event that brings those two environments together from hosts and IPs over to accounts. And now we're within the cloud environment. And what we're able to see is somebody tried to, or somebody logged in from a suspicious location. What we see here is, hey, the browser doesn't match. We have a Linux. Usually we have a Windows system, a Windows 10, NT10. Before it was United States of America. Now it's Hutchinson, Kansas. Something might be not okay, but so far, okay, we had this connecting event, and we had some suspicious login. What further? So then there were happening some federation changes. So somebody tampered with the federation settings of your tenant. It moved on to creating a redundant activity. So they gave access to an email archiving tool to extract all the history information, email data. Then it moved on. To some suspicious remote execution. So that's kind of interesting as well. So the transport rule here, that's a demo environment, that's why it's empty. But the transport rule started to send all the new incoming emails back to a foreign account. And then the very interesting thing happened. So probably you know the eDiscovery function of Mac O365. So eDiscovery is a great tool to find everything in your tenant. So it searches through everything and provides you everything on a silver plate. The attackers know that as well. So what they do is they create searches. And in this case, we had a search created, like you can see here, that matches the content, source, code, or patent. So every information in relation of those buzzwords is being grabbed, is being provided directly. And then now really the interesting thing comes in. Because it's cloud, because it's kind of interconnected and we have several kind of APIs, what we can do is every time a new eDiscovery file gets dropped on the SharePoint, I can upload it to a Dropbox API of my choice and the data is gone. So in this case, Vectra didn't intercept. Vectra didn't intercept to stop the breach. So there would be several kind of points where we could interact with. Let me show you that. We say we are kind of detection and response platform. We are the detection and response platform. And you have already things in place like for the investigation. You have Elastic, you have probably Logarithms, Splunk, ArcSight, CrowdStrike, whatever tool in this quadrant or even more. That are great tools to investigate. They are great tools to respond as well. From Phantom to ServiceNow to Fortinet to the Hive. So or Jira. There's several kind of ways how to integrate our solutions because the challenge is you need to find the attacker in the right time and before it's too late. And what we do is we say, yes, you have already great tools in place, from the firewalls to NAC solutions to endpoint detection and response. We can integrate with them. So what we do is we use the APIs to help you to stop the attacker when an account gets into the critical quadrant, when an account gets a critical score. So you can stop the breach before the worst happened. We have several kind of examples that would now, that would be too much for this session. But I'm on the session. I'm on site on the SmartCom event, so please feel free to get in touch with me. I'm happy to share with you some stories and to discuss everything in detail. So thank you very much, and see you at the event.